A dog won't stop barking at an abandoned mine. What his owner discovers inside will haunt him forever. The mountain air was crisp, carrying the scent of damp earth and pine needles. The only sounds were the soft rustling of leaves and the rhythmic crunch of Daniel's boots on the dirt trail. His German shepherd, Leo, trotted ahead, his ears perked and nose twitching, as if he were tracking something unseen. Daniel had always loved the quiet of the mountains. It was why he had come here, to escape, to forget. His life in the city had once been filled with breaking stories and deadlines, but that world had turned on him. He had written an article exposing corruption, believing he was doing the right thing. But the fallout had cost someone their life. The guilt weighed on him like an anchor. Now, all he wanted was silence. Leo suddenly stopped. His body stiffened, his tail rigid. He let out a low growl, his amber eyes locked on something in the distance. Daniel frowned. "What is it, buddy?" Leo didn't move. His ears twitched, his head tilted slightly as if listening to something Daniel couldn't hear. Then, without warning, he bolted off the path, disappearing into the thick underbrush. "Leo, hey!" Daniel's heart kicked up. Leo was well trained. He never ran off like this. Something was wrong. Cursing under his breath, Daniel sprinted after him. Branches scraped his arms as he pushed through tangled vines and uneven ground. The further he went, the quieter the forest became. No birds, no insects, just the sound of his own breathing and Leo's distant, frantic barks. Then he saw it. At the bottom of a small hill, half hidden by overgrown bushes, was a rusted metal sign. Dawson Mines, restricted area, do not enter. The words were faded, almost erased by time, but the warning was clear. Daniel swallowed hard. The mine. He had read about it. Decades ago, it had collapsed, trapping dozens of workers inside. The company had sealed it off rather than attempt a full rescue. It had been abandoned ever since. Leo stood near the entrance, barking wildly at a narrow gap between the collapsed rocks. His fur bristled, his stance uneasy, but he didn't back away. It was as if something inside was calling to him. Daniel shivered. The entrance was a gaping wound in the earth, a black mouth leading into nothingness. Cold air seeped from within, carrying a scent of damp stone and something else. Something old. He hesitated. Every logical part of his brain told him to turn around, but then he heard it. A sound, faint, distant, a whisper. Daniel froze. Had he imagined it? The wind, maybe. But no, it came again. A soft, echoing voice, barely more than a breath. "Help!" His stomach tightened. His pulse hammered in his ears. Someone was inside, but that was impossible. The mine had been sealed for years. Leo whined, pawing at the loose rocks. Daniel took a step closer. His heart pounded. Every instinct screamed at him to walk away. But then, another whisper, clearer this time. "Please, help me." Daniel clenched his fists. He had run away from responsibility before. He had walked away from people who needed him, but not this time. Taking a deep breath, he pulled out his flashlight, swallowed his fear, and stepped into the darkness.
The moment Daniel stepped inside the mine, the world changed. The sunlight vanished behind him, swallowed by the jagged rocks that framed the entrance. The air grew thick and heavy, carrying the scent of damp earth, rusted metal, and something deeper, something old. Leo's nails clicked against the stone floor as he padded forward cautiously, his ears twitching. His tail, usually wagging, was stiff. Daniel exhaled slowly, adjusting his flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing walls lined with wooden support beams that looked weak with age. Rusted mining carts sat abandoned on their tracks, their wheels frozen in time. Cobwebs stretched across the ceiling, their delicate strands trembling in the breeze that whispered from the depths. The whisper. He had heard it, and now, as he moved deeper, he swore he could hear it again. "Help me." Daniel's breath hitched. The voice was faint, as if carried by the air itself, slipping through the cracks in the stone. Leo growled low in his throat. His eyes darted to the shadows beyond the flashlight's reach. Daniel swallowed hard. He had been a journalist, an investigator. He wasn't the type to believe in ghosts or supernatural nonsense. But something about this place sent a chill through his bones. Still, he kept moving. The tunnel narrowed, forcing him to crouch as he stepped over broken wooden planks and crumbling stone. His flashlight flickered for a moment, and his heart lurched. Not now. Not in here. He smacked it against his palm, and the light steadied. He let out a shaky breath, gripping it tighter. Leo let out a sharp bark and stopped suddenly. His body stiffened, his gaze locked on a pile of debris ahead. Daniel followed his eyes, and then he saw it. A small hand, pale and trembling, barely visible beneath the fallen rocks. Daniel's stomach dropped. He rushed forward, falling to his knees. "Hey, can you hear me?" A soft whimper answered him. A child's voice. Leo whined, stepping closer, sniffing the air. Daniel's hands trembled as he started pulling away the smaller rocks. His fingers scraped against the rough surface, but he didn't care. He had to get the kid out. Little by little, he uncovered more. A thin arm, a dirty sleeve, strands of tangled hair, and then a face. A little girl. No older than 7. Her wide brown eyes blinked up at him, filled with fear and exhaustion. Her lips trembled, cracked and dry. Daniel's throat tightened. "It's okay," he said softly. "I'm here. I'm going to get you out." The girl swallowed hard and nodded. Her legs were pinned beneath heavier rocks, but Daniel worked fast. He shoved one large stone aside, wincing as dust filled the air. His muscles burned, but he kept going. Finally, after what felt like forever, her legs were free. She whimpered as she tried to move. Daniel immediately lifted her into his arms, careful not to hurt her more. She was light, too light. Leo sniffed her gently, then let out a soft, reassuring bark. "What's your name?" Daniel asked. The girl hesitated, her voice barely above a whisper. "Emily." Daniel forced a small smile. "Hey, Emily, you're safe now." She looked up at him, her lower lip trembling. Then, as if the weight of everything hit her all at once, she threw her arms around his neck and sobbed. Daniel swallowed past the lump in his throat. He gently rubbed her back, whispering, "It's okay. I've got you." Leo stood guard beside them, his ears twitching at every sound. Daniel's relief was short-lived. A sudden rumble echoed through the tunnel, making the walls tremble. Dust rained from the ceiling, and a sharp crack split through the silence. The ground beneath them shifted. Daniel's heart pounded. "Cave in," he muttered. He grabbed Emily tightly and jumped back just as a section of the ceiling collapsed, sending a cloud of dust and debris into the air. Rocks tumbled, blocking the path they had come through. They were trapped. Daniel coughed, blinking through the dust. His flashlight flickered again. Leo barked sharply, pacing near the rockfall, as if trying to find another way out. Emily clung to Daniel, shaking. "We're stuck," she whispered. "No," Daniel said firmly. "There's always another way." He turned in the opposite direction on path left, a tunnel leading deeper into the mine. Daniel hesitated. This was the part in horror stories where the characters made the worst decision possible. But this wasn't a movie. This was real. And there was no other choice. Holding Emily close, he took a step forward. Leo went first, sniffing the air. His ears flicked back. He wasn't happy, but he kept going. The deeper they went, the colder it became. The air smelled damp, almost metallic. The silence pressed in around them, broken only by their footsteps and Emily's occasional sniffles. Daniel tried not to think about why she was here. Had she wandered in? Had someone left her here? And most importantly, was she alone? A chill crawled down his spine. Suddenly, Emily stiffened in his arms. Daniel stopped. "What is it?" Emily didn't answer. Her eyes were wide, staring into the darkness ahead. Leo let out a low, warning growl. Daniel slowly lifted his flashlight. The beam landed on the far end of the tunnel, where something moved. Daniel's breath caught. A shadow shifted against the stone. For a split second, he swore he saw a figure, tall, unmoving, its face hidden in the darkness. Then it was gone. Daniel's pulse thundered in his ears. Had he imagined it? Leo barked, snapping him back to reality. They had to keep moving. With his heart pounding, Daniel pressed forward. The tunnel sloped downward, and soon the walls changed. Instead of rough stone, they were lined with carvings, symbols etched deep into the rock. Strange spirals, stick-figure people, and something else. Something with too many eyes. Daniel swallowed hard. He didn't know what he had just walked into, but he had a feeling this mine wasn't abandoned. Not really. Daniel's grip tightened around the flashlight as he scanned the strange carvings on the tunnel walls. The symbols, though weathered with time, felt eerily alive under the dim glow of his beam. Spirals, stick figure people, and something more unsettling, shapes with too many eyes, staring back at him from the stone. He swallowed hard, his breath shallow. Emily clung to his shirt, her small fingers gripping the fabric tightly. "What do they mean?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. Daniel didn't have an answer. His heart pounded in his chest. The deeper they went, the colder the air became, and with every step, he couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't alone. Leo, always a steady presence, was tense. His ears flicked back, and his low growl vibrated through the tunnel. He sniffed the ground, then lifted his head, nose twitching at something. Daniel couldn't see. "We need to keep moving," Daniel muttered, more to himself than to anyone else. He shifted Emily's weight in his arms and pressed forward, his boots crunching against the loose dirt and stone beneath them. The tunnel stretched on, curving slightly downward. The deeper they went, the more unnatural it felt, as if they were walking into something that was never meant to be found. The whispering started again. Daniel froze. It was faint at first, like wind slipping through cracks in the stone, but the longer he stood there, the more distinct it became. It wasn't just one voice, it was many. Emily gasped and buried her face against Daniel's shoulder. Leo's fur bristled, his tail stiff. "Help us. They left us here, forgotten." Daniel's blood ran cold. His instincts screamed at him to turn back, but there was no turning back. The tunnel behind them had collapsed. The only way out was forward. He forced himself to take another step. The voices grew louder. Then the ground shifted beneath them. Daniel stumbled, barely keeping his balance. Rocks tumbled from the walls, dust filled the air, and a low rumble echoed through the tunnel. And then, suddenly, it stopped. The silence was worse. Emily whimpered. Leo let out a short, sharp bark. Then, ahead of them, the tunnel opened. Daniel's flashlight revealed a massive underground chamber. The ceiling arched high above them, lined with jagged stalactites. The air was damp, thick with the scent of earth and something metallic. In the center of the chamber was a large pit, deep and seemingly endless. The carvings on the walls continued here, but they were clearer, more detailed. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. The symbols didn't just show stick figure miners, they showed something else. Figures kneeling, hands raised in worship. And in the center, a creature, towering and inhuman, its body woven into the stone as if the cave itself had birthed it. Daniel's stomach twisted. What the hell was this place? Emily shuddered against him. "I don't like it here." Daniel didn't either. He turned, ready to leave, when a sudden cry split the silence. A human cry. Daniel's heart stopped. Leo barked furiously, the sound echoing off the cavern walls. Daniel whipped his flashlight toward the source of the noise and nearly dropped it. A man stood at the far side of the chamber. His clothes were tattered, his face streaked with dirt. His eyes were wide, hollow, desperate. And then Daniel saw something even worse. Behind him, half hidden in the shadows, was another figure. Only this one wasn't human. It loomed just outside the flashlight's reach, its shape shifting, its presence thick and suffocating. The man's chest rose and fell in sharp, panicked breaths. "You shouldn't be here." Daniel tightened his grip on Emily. "Who are you?" The man shook his head wildly. "Doesn't matter. None of us were supposed to find this place." His voice cracked. "The others, the miners, they disturbed it, woke it up." Daniel's blood ran cold. Woke up what? The man opened his mouth to speak, and something yanked him into the darkness. He didn't even have time to scream. Daniel staggered back, his pulse hammering in his ears. Leo barked again, more frantic this time, but Daniel couldn't see anything. The flashlight's beam shook in his hands. Emily clung to him, trembling. "We have to go," she whispered. Daniel didn't need to be told twice, but before he could move, the whispering returned. This time it wasn't pleading. This time it was angry. A sharp gust of wind burst through the chamber, strong enough to send dust swirling around them. The carvings on the walls seemed to shift, as if the figures were watching. Leo let out a sharp, warning growl, and then a shadow moved. Daniel didn't wait. He turned and ran. Emily clutched his neck, her breath hot against his skin. Leo was right beside them, his nails scraping against the stone. The tunnel twisted and turned, and the whispers followed them. Daniel didn't stop. He didn't look back. He just ran, until finally, A light, faint, bluish glow ahead. Daniel skidded to a stop as they stumbled into another open cavern, but this one was different. The walls shimmered. The ceiling sparkled with glowing blue crystals, casting an ethereal light over everything. And in the center, an opening, a way out. Daniel's knees nearly buckled with relief. He could feel fresh air drifting from the passage. They weren't trapped. They could escape. But just as he took a step forward, a deep, inhuman growl rumbled from the tunnel behind them. Leo whimpered. Emily squeezed her eyes shut, and Daniel knew. Whatever was in that mine was coming for them. The growl from the tunnel behind them sent a sharp jolt of fear through Daniel's chest. It was close. The sound wasn't human, and it wasn't an animal either. It was something deep, layered, almost vibrating against the cave walls. Leo pressed against Daniel's leg, his muscles tense, his eyes locked on the darkness behind them. Emily's small hands clung desperately to his shirt, her tiny body trembling against his chest. Daniel forced himself to move. He wasn't going to wait for whatever was in that mine to reach them. "Come on," he whispered hoarsely. His voice cracked, but he didn't care. He shifted Emily higher in his arms and ran toward the tunnel, glowing with the eerie blue light. Leo stayed close at his side, his nails clicking against the stone floor. The cavern behind them shuddered as another deep growl echoed through the space. The sound wasn't coming from just one place anymore. It was everywhere. Daniel's pulse hammered in his ears. The tunnel ahead twisted and curved, its walls shimmering with the strange bioluminescent crystals. The eerie blue glow reflected off the damp stone, casting long shadows as Daniel ran. Emily buried her face against his shoulder. "It's coming," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Daniel didn't need the warning. He could feel it, something big, something ancient, shifting in the darkness behind them. And then the whispers returned. But this time they weren't pleading, they were screaming. "You were not supposed to find this place. Leave. Leave before it takes you too." The voices twisted, overlapping, rising into a horrible, ear-piercing wail. The tunnel walls vibrated, loose stones tumbling down. Daniel ran faster, his lungs burned, his legs ached, but he didn't stop. Then the tunnel split. Two paths. One veered left, dipping deeper into the mine. The other curved right, leading upward, toward the faintest hint of fresh air. Daniel didn't hesitate. He turned right. Leo barked sharply, as if agreeing with the choice. Daniel's heart pounded as they scrambled up the uneven path. The incline grew steeper, forcing him to shift Emily in his arms and lean forward to keep his balance. And then the walls shook violently. A deafening crack tore through the cavern behind them. Daniel stole a glance over his shoulder, and his stomach dropped. The tunnel was collapsing. A black mass moved in the swirling dust, a shifting shadow with no clear shape, only the glint of too many eyes. Daniel's mind barely processed it. He just ran. The tunnel ahead narrowed, forcing him to crouch as he pushed forward. The whispers grew louder, clawing at his mind, filling his head with half-formed words. "Turn back! You cannot escape. You will stay here with us." "No," Daniel growled under his breath, his teeth clenched. "Not today." The tunnel opened up, and Daniel stumbled onto a ledge. He froze, his breath catching in his throat. Below him, an underground river churned, its waters black and wild. Jagged rocks jutted from the current like hungry teeth. The air smelled damp, charged with energy. The only way across was an old, half-rotted wooden bridge hanging over the river. It creaked against the force of the wind rushing through the cavern. Daniel's stomach twisted. He didn't like this. But behind them, the tunnel shook again. The thing in the mine was coming. He had seconds to decide. Daniel clenched his jaw. "We're going." He tightened his grip on Emily and stepped onto the bridge. The wood groaned beneath his weight, shifting slightly. Leo whined but followed. One step. 2. 3. The whispers rose into a furious shriek. "Do not leave." The entire cavern rumbled, shaking loose stones from the ceiling. Daniel kept moving. Then a sharp crack. The wooden planks beneath his foot snapped. Daniel lunged forward, barely keeping his balance. Emily let out a startled cry. Behind them, the tunnel burst open. A shadow surged from the cave, shifting and writhing, its eyes glowing with hunger. Leo barked furiously, his fur bristling. Daniel forced himself to move faster. The other side was so close, just a few more steps. Then, a final explosion of sound. The bridge gave way. Daniel's stomach plummeted as the wood snapped beneath him. For a split second, he was falling, Emily screaming in his arms. Then, Leo's teeth sank into his sleeve. Daniel's body jerked midair. Leo had caught him, digging his paws into the ground at the edge of the ledge. Daniel's heart slammed against his ribs. His feet dangled over the rushing river below. For a single terrifying moment, he thought Leo wouldn't be strong enough. Then, a burst of adrenaline. With one final effort, Daniel swung his leg up, hooked his knee over the edge, and hauled himself and Emily onto solid ground. They collapsed, gasping for breath. Leo licked Daniel's face, his tail wagging wildly. Daniel let out a shaky laugh. "Good boy," he whispered, then shook the cavern. Daniel turned just in time to see the shadow surge toward them, but the bridge was gone. The thing plunged into the river below. It let out a final, unearthly screech, and then it was gone. Silence fell. The air shifted. The weight, the presence in the mine, lifted. Daniel exhaled, his body sagging with exhaustion. Emily's tiny voice broke the silence. "Is it over?" Daniel pulled her close. "Yeah," he said, more to convince himself. "It's over." Leo wagged his tail once, nudging Daniel's hand as if to say, "Let's go home." Daniel nodded. He turned toward the tunnel ahead, toward the real exit. This time, when they walked forward, the only sound was their own footsteps. The search and rescue team found them near dawn. Emily was reunited with her parents, who sobbed as they held her. The mine was sealed off permanently, the town declaring it too dangerous for anyone to enter. Daniel never spoke of what he saw, but sometimes at night he heard whispers on the wind, and in the distance, deep beneath the earth, something still stirred.